Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about evasion and why evasion is ultimately the root of all evil. So to begin with, evasion is basically the idea that when you're making a decision or trying to decide what to believe about something or anything like that, you push away some aspect of reality because you don't want to confront it. You don't want to have to think about it because either it'd be too painful to consider or you know what sort of conclusion it would entail, so you basically ignore it. You don't want to put in the effort to deal with it, anything like that. And this is ultimately very destructive because as a human being, you have certain requirements to live and certain requirements for happiness. And you live, and by deducing these sort of requirements, by using your rational mind to look at reality, form concepts about it, and use reason and looking at relationships between these concepts in your life and different things like that. You use reason to form concepts, look at relationships between them, and use reason to deduce principles that will help you live and make decisions in life. And evasion basically gets in the way of this whole process by making you ignore a certain relationship in reality or ignore a certain fact that you need to consider regarding a concept. And this ultimately makes your conclusions not necessarily related to reality, and you become disconnected from reality as well. So ultimately, you live in reality. The principles, the things that your life requires, they come from reality. They're in reality because that's the only thing that exists. There's nothing that exists besides reality. So everything that you need, everything that your life requires, is part of existence, and you need to use reason on that and think about those things and their relation to you to determine what sort of things are good for my life, what sort of things will make me happy. And evasion gets in the way of this process. It says, no, I'm not going to consider that. It might be the thing that makes me most happy, or it might be self-destructive, but I'm not going to think about that. I'll just do it anyways, or I'll not do it at all because I don't want to do that, because it'd be too much effort, or it'd be too painful, or something like that. You just push it away. You don't focus on it, and that leads to very self-destructive behavior because you're disconnecting yourself from reality. You need to be connected to reality. You need to use your mind to focus on reality and determine what certain principles your life requires, and then act on those principles. If you have certain principles and you just don't act on them, that's also an act of evasion because you're not actually looking at what principles your life requires. You're not following the proper principles, and you're gonna engage in self-destructive behavior. And ultimately, just in general terms, evasion destroys your capacity to think. If you're not actually thinking about reality, you're not thinking about anything worthwhile. You're not thinking in general because reality is really the only thing you can think about. And if you're evading reality, then you're ultimately destroying yourself and your mind in the process, which is your means of survival. And when you habitually evade, over time that becomes ingrained in your subconscious. And over time it just becomes more and more habitual, and you're just going to keep hurting yourself more and more. So if you evade, the key thing would just be to recognize it and begin to consider aspects of reality that you feel like you're ignoring. That's really the key. You just need to start using your mind more and focusing more on every aspect of reality, and not pushing away important aspects just because you don't want to consider them, or because you think it would damage your worldview, or be too much effort to consider, or be something you couldn't respond to, so you don't want to think about that because you want to hold strong to your current belief system. But ultimately, you just want to find truth and be happy. Those are absolutely the key motivations. And you need to look at reality to figure those out, because truth comes from reality. It's what corresponds to reality. And happiness is an objective fact, an objective condition of yourself that has objective requirements in reality. And all of these you need to use your mind to figure out. You need to look at reality and focus in on what sort of things does my life require, or what sort of things all integrate together? What are the facts about this certain concept, and how it relates to other concepts, and what is true about this? What is truth? And ultimately, not evading will help you determine truth and happiness a lot easier than anything else. Another consequence of evasion would be drifting. Drifting also leads to a lot of negative things because you're ultimately evading the fact that you have to use your mind and you have to focus in order to live. You can't drift through life. You can't drift through life. You have to, at least you can't drift without being a parasite on other people. And you're not really living if you're drifting. Ultimately, happiness and life and all of that comes from focusing on reality and figuring out what sort of principles your life requires. Because then you generate a rule for yourself, both explicitly and it becomes integrated into your subconscious. So then you act as a more moral person, just in general, just based on with a better personality, I guess, a more rational personality. But if you just drift through life, you're just going to take whatever premises people throw at you, with all the contradictions involved. And when you live with those contradictions, you can't live like that. It leads to a lot of mental problems, just because you can't believe one thing and then and constantly have emotions that contradict what you believe. That leads to a lot of internal conflict and a lot of negative emotions. But that's what drifting leads to. And drifting ultimately stems from an evasion of your requirement to think itself. You need to use your mind to survive. Your mind is your means of survival. And habitual drifting ultimately comes from an ignorance of this fact, an evasion of this fact that your mind is the requirement. So yeah, ultimately evasion in this context is the root of all evil, because it is the intentional shutting off of your mind to something. And your mind is responsible for your happiness and what is good. Because ultimately your life is your standard of value. It is the standard of value. So yeah, your life is a standard of value, and you live using your mind, and evasion just shuts off your mind, is intentional shutting off of your mind. So it's absolutely the root of all evil. So I think that's all I have to say for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.